Grammy Award winner who really pioneered his genre.
He certainly did. Neo-soul singer D'Angelo has died after a long and private battle with pancreatic cancer.
D'Angelo's passing at 51 didn't just break hearts, it shattered an entire era of soul. One moment, fans were waiting for his next move. The next, they were lighting candles for the man who redefined R&B. But behind the headlines lies a story few expected, of loss, mystery, and the haunting beauty he left behind. What really happened to the voice that changed music forever? Fans can't even imagine the miserable last days of his life because of one fatal reason: cancer. Farewell to a soulful man. The world woke up on October 14, 2025, to news no one wanted to believe. D'Angelo, the man whose voice could stop time, had passed away at 51. The confirmation came from his family through a simple but devastating statement. The shining star of our family has dimmed his light, but his music will continue to guide us. Within minutes, tributes began to flood social media, but disbelief lingered. For years, D'Angelo had been known for retreating from the spotlight, only to emerge stronger, more soulful, and more unpredictable. This time, though, the silence was real and final. The cause of death was confirmed shortly after. Complications from pancreatic cancer, a battle he had kept intensely private. Those closest to him said D'Angelo faced his illness with the same quiet intensity that marked his music, refusing pity, focused instead on family, prayer, and peace. Friends later shared that in his final weeks, he was surrounded by music. Old records spun in the background as he sat with loved ones, humming along to Al Green and Marvin Gaye. He wasn't afraid, one family member said. He just wanted to hear soul one last time. His death came only months after the loss of his former partner, Angie Stone, who had been a major figure in both his personal and creative life. Their son, Michael Jr., reportedly helped arrange the private family service held in their home state of Virginia. Sources close to the family described the service as quiet but transcendent, filled with gospel, candlelight, and tears. Stevie Wonder performed an unannounced rendition of "Love's in Need of Love Today," moving everyone in the room to silence. Lauryn Hill read a passage from the Book of Psalms, her voice trembling as she called D'Angelo a vessel of divine sound. The wake drew a small but powerful crowd of musicians, producers, and longtime collaborators, men and women, who helped shape the neo-soul movement he spearheaded. Many had stayed in touch through the years despite his reclusive nature, and they gathered to say goodbye, not to a celebrity, but to a brother. "He gave us a language," one of his early bandmates said quietly. "He made us remember what soul was supposed to feel like." Even as fans held vigils outside the church and streamed his songs on loop, the family asked for privacy, reminding everyone that D'Angelo's life had always been about more than fame. His manager later revealed that D'Angelo had been working on new material up until the final months of his life. Unfinished sketches and recordings that may never be released. He was chasing something spiritual, the manager said. He wanted his last project to feel like grace. News outlets described his funeral as small but luminous, echoing the mood of his music, intimate, sacred, and timeless. There were no cameras, no red carpets, just the steady rhythm of organ chords and voices lifted in worship. The closing song was his own, untitled "How Does It Feel?", reinterpreted by a local choir. As the final notes echoed through the sanctuary, the crowd rose in unison, celebrating not his fame, but the feeling he left behind. As the music faded and the lights went out, everyone was left asking, what did the people who knew and loved him say in the end? Tributes from the music world. The days after D'Angelo's passing felt heavy, but they were also filled with love. One by one, friends, collaborators, and musical heroes stepped forward to share what he meant to them. Wonder, who had quietly performed at the service, later said in a radio interview, "D'Angelo wasn't just talented, he was chosen." You could hear God in that man's voice. Those words echoed what many already knew, that D'Angelo's music was never just about sound, but about spirit. Hill, who had joined him years ago on stage in one of his rare live appearances, posted a handwritten note online. "His voice healed me," she wrote. "He reminded me that soul is sacred." Hill had been at his private funeral, and sources said she spent time with the family afterward, sharing stories about the early neo-soul days when both she and D'Angelo were reshaping R&B from the ground up. "He was quiet," she said, "but when he spoke, it was poetry." Beyoncé, who had always admired D'Angelo's musicianship, paid tribute with a live cover of Untitled, How Does It Feel?, during a show in Houston just days later.
"This is for one of the greatest ever," she told the crowd as fans raised their phones and sang along.
Online, the clip went viral, racking up millions of views within hours. It wasn't just a performance, it was a love letter from one artist to another. John Legend, who once called D'Angelo a musician's musician, wrote that voodoo changed the way he thought about production and groove. "He had this patience in his art," Legend said. "He wasn't chasing hits, he was chasing truth." Nile Rodgers shared a similar thought, recalling the first time he met D'Angelo backstage in the early 2000s. "He thanked me for my guitar work," Rodgers wrote. "But I told him, 'No, man, we should be thanking you.'" Even artists from younger generations like H.E.R., Anderson .Paak, and Leon Bridges shared how deeply D'Angelo influenced their sound. "He made it cool to be vulnerable," Paak tweeted, "to groove and still tell the truth." Fans noticed that nearly every tribute mentioned the same things: honesty, soul, and presence. It wasn't about fame or awards, it was about the way his music made people feel. Missy Elliott, another friend from his early career days, said it best in one interview. "D'Angelo didn't need to talk loud to be heard. You felt him, even in silence. That sense of quiet power ran through every memory, every story told in the days that followed." Artists didn't just mourn him, they seemed to be holding on to him through song, through memory, through every echo of his voice that still filled their playlists. For many, it was proof that some artists never really leave. Their sound lingers, their words still carry weight, and their spirit continues through those they touched. Of course, to understand why these tributes hit so hard, you have to look back at who D'Angelo really was: the artist, the rebel, the man who brought soul back to life, the fireball that he was. Before the world mourned D'Angelo, it first fell in love with him. His career wasn't built on flashy trends or headline-grabbing moments. It was built on something deeper, something that felt timeless. From the moment Brown Sugar hit the shelves in 1995, listeners knew they were hearing a sound that couldn't be faked. Smooth but raw, spiritual yet seductive, his voice pulled people in like gravity. D'Angelo didn't just sing, he channeled. Born Michael Eugene Archer in Richmond, Virginia, he grew up in a home filled with gospel music. His father was a Pentecostal minister, his mother a devout churchgoer, and from an early age, music was his second language. That foundation never left him. Even when his lyrics became sensual or political, there was always a church rhythm behind the groove, that unmistakable mix of soul and sanctity that made his music feel like confession and prayer all at once. By his early 20s, he was already being hailed as the new face of soul. Brown Sugar earned platinum success and turned him into the reluctant poster boy of the neo-soul movement. Songs like Lady and Cruisin' brought old-school warmth into the modern era. But fame didn't sit comfortably with D'Angelo. He wasn't built for the red carpet or endless interviews. He wanted the art, not the spotlight. That distance only made him more intriguing, and it reached its peak with his second album, Voodoo, in 2000. The project didn't just top charts, it reshaped R&B. With Questlove on drums and Pino Palladino on bass, the record captured something almost hypnotic, loose, human, and deeply alive. Then came the music video for Untitled, How Does It Feel?, which became one of the most talked-about visuals of its time. Shot in a single take, it turned D'Angelo into both a sex symbol and an enigma. But behind that success was exhaustion. The fame that Voodoo brought also broke his peace. D'Angelo retreated from the public eye for more than a decade, haunted by the pressures of celebrity and his own perfectionism. He didn't return until 2014 with Black Messiah, a fiery and political masterpiece that reminded everyone why he was untouchable. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a resurrection. Halfway through the record's release cycle, critics started calling it prophetic. Songs like The Charade and 1,000 Deaths spoke directly to racial injustice and spiritual struggle. D'Angelo wasn't just making music anymore, he was documenting the soul of a generation. "I make music for people who still feel something," he once said. "That's all I ever wanted." Over the years, his sound inspired countless artists, from Frank Ocean to H.E.R., from Miguel to Daniel Caesar. They all carried pieces of his rhythm, his honesty, his refusal to compromise. To many, D'Angelo was proof that true artistry doesn't need to shout. It just needs to feel. And yet, behind the legend was a man who wanted simple things: peace, family, and time away from the noise. The quieter life. Fame never fit him comfortably, and those close to him often said that he measured success differently from most. For D'Angelo, joy wasn't found in awards or recognition, but in moments that reminded him of who he was before the world called him a genius. After years of touring and studio sessions, he often disappeared back home to Richmond, Virginia. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, and completely unassuming. Just a man who loved his kids and still dropped by local record stores when no one expected it. His longtime friends said he preferred being Mike there, not D'Angelo. His relationship with singer Angie Stone was one of the most public aspects of his private life. The two shared a son, Michael Jr., and a deep creative connection that fueled some of his earliest songs. Even after they parted ways, the respect and love between them remained. When Angie passed earlier in 2025, those close to D'Angelo said it broke something in him. "He never really got over her," one friend admitted quietly. "She was the one who saw his light before the world did." Away from the music scene, D'Angelo poured himself into small acts of kindness. He quietly supported youth programs in Richmond, donating instruments and helping fund local music workshops for kids who couldn't afford lessons. It wasn't about publicity, he made sure of that. For him, it was a way of giving back what music had given him. He also spent much of his later life reconnecting with faith. Those who knew him well say that during his final years, he attended church again, not out of guilt or obligation, but because it grounded him. He wanted peace, and he found it in community and prayer. His pastor once said, "Mike didn't come here as D'Angelo. He came here as a believer who was still figuring things out like the rest of us." Though he avoided Hollywood and stayed far from the industry buzz, D'Angelo continued to collaborate quietly with musicians he trusted. There were whispers of unreleased tracks, unfinished projects, and private jam sessions that only a handful of people ever heard. He didn't stop creating, a close friend revealed. He just stopped chasing. That balance between the man and the myth made him even more fascinating. D'Angelo's life outside the spotlight was proof that his art came from somewhere real. He wasn't trying to build a legacy. He was simply living, loving, and finding grace in everyday things. As much as he sought a quiet life, his influence was anything but silent, and the way people remember him today shows just how powerful that legacy became, except for the one who did not see his greatness. A debated career. For all the love and respect D'Angelo earned over the years, his career was never without opposition. Even at the height of his fame, the same qualities that made him brilliant also made him divisive. He wasn't your typical R&B star. He didn't chase charts, didn't cater to the press, and didn't deliver the kind of constant output the industry expects. That unpredictability fascinated people, but it also frustrated them. When Brown Sugar dropped in 1995, critics hailed him as the savior of soul, a modern Marvin Gaye who brought warmth and sensuality back to music in an age of hip-hop bravado and pop gloss. But as his fame grew, so did the pressure to stay in the spotlight. By the time Voodoo arrived in 2000, it was clear D'Angelo wasn't just another R&B singer. He was an artist in the truest sense, experimental, spiritual, and complex. The now iconic, untitled "How Does It Feel" video turned him into a sex symbol overnight. But for D'Angelo, that image became a curse. He grew to resent being objectified, saying later that the attention on his body distracted people from his music. The backlash was quiet but deep. He began pulling away from the public eye, refusing interviews, skipping appearances, and eventually disappearing from the music scene altogether. Fans were confused. Critics, meanwhile, began to speculate. Was he a perfectionist, trapped by his own standards? Or a man simply tired of being misunderstood? Then came Black Messiah in 2014, 14 long years after Voodoo. The reaction was immediate and intense. Some hailed it as revolutionary, a fearless mix of funk, gospel, and protest soul that captured the urgency of the times. Others, expecting a return to his earlier, smoother sound, found it raw and abrasive. Rolling Stone called it a masterpiece born of chaos, while others said it was too heavy, too opaque. But D'Angelo didn't chase approval. He never did. He made what he felt and left the rest to interpretation. The press often struggled to pin him down. Some labeled him reclusive or difficult, while others praised his mystery. He wasn't the type to explain his art, and that bothered some critics who wanted neat narratives. He could be soft-spoken in interviews, thoughtful one moment and withdrawn the next. But to those who really listened, that unpredictability wasn't arrogance, it was honesty. D'Angelo was a man at war with the machine of fame, and he wasn't afraid to lose a few battles to keep his soul intact. There were also harsher takes. Some argued he squandered his prime years, that his long absences were self-inflicted wounds. They said he could have dominated R&B if only he'd stayed consistent. But others, including many artists who looked up to him, saw his retreat as proof of integrity. He wasn't chasing Grammys or headlines, he was chasing truth. Some people make albums, Questlove once said. D'Angelo makes statements. Even now, after his death, the conversation continues. Was D'Angelo an underachiever or an untouchable genius? Did his silence hurt his legacy or protect it? What's certain is that when people talk about soul, about vulnerability in music, about artistry that comes from somewhere deeper than fame, his name always comes up. Remembering D'Angelo. Even now, weeks after his passing, it feels like D'Angelo never really left. His music still hums in cafes, spins on late-night radio shows, and fills playlists for people who grew up on his sound. You hear his fingerprints in every whispered harmony, every lazy bass line, every song that dares to be both intimate and spiritual at once. D'Angelo didn't just influence a genre, he rewired how artists thought about soul itself. You can hear it in artists like Anderson .Paak, Leon Bridges, and Lucky Day, each carrying a flicker of his warmth. that unpolished humanity he made cool again. For them, D'Angelo wasn't just an idol, he was a permission slip. A reminder that vulnerability, groove, and imperfection could coexist beautifully. He made it okay to sound messy, to breathe between notes, to feel instead of perform. His impact also stretched far beyond music. To a generation of Black artists, he represented ownership, of identity, of artistry, of truth. He proved you could honor the roots of gospel and funk while speaking boldly about love, faith, and pain in your own way. His silence, too, became part of his story. The years he spent away from fame reminded people that stepping back doesn't mean fading out. Sometimes it means saving yourself. In recent years, younger fans have rediscovered his catalog through streaming, TikTok edits, and nostalgic revivals of 2000 soul. Suddenly, songs like Spanish Joint and One Mo Gin are finding new audiences who weren't even born when Voodoo dropped. And every new listener falls into that same trance, the sway, the ache, the truth that only D'Angelo could summon. But perhaps the most lasting thing about him is the way he made people feel seen. His music wasn't perfect. It was human. It carried cracks, breath, and heartbeat. Tributes continue to pour in, from musicians, preachers, and even fans who never met him, but swore his songs got them through something dark. Questlove wrote that D'Angelo's passing left a hole in the groove of time. It's hard to disagree. Every generation gets a few voices that feel eternal, and D'Angelo's is one of them. Smoky, sacred, and still echoing through the hearts of those who found comfort in it. His story may have ended, but his music keeps asking the same question. What does it mean to truly feel alive? Subscribe for more stories that remember the music and the souls that never fade.